Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our IFAMA 2020 Goes Digital show. My name is Dick Veerman in Dutch, and my guest is Barry Marttin. He's on the board of Rabobank. I'm very happy, we are very happy, Barry, to have you. Thank you very much for sharing your valuable time with us.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So IFAMA 2020 was about resilient food systems. And obviously, we're always talking about it is necessary to create resilient food systems. And we didn't. That is why COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 spread over the world by planes, and it got everywhere within 2 months. Now we need to do something. The lockdowns, well, we stopped the lockdowns. Are we going to change something? What is the impact of COVID-19 on the food system? Are we going to change it, or are we just trying to get back to normalcy? Perhaps that is what Trump is doing in the US. What do you think as a banker? Because you finance it, you have to assess credit risk. What do you think is the impact?
Well, you have a lot of levels of what you're talking about, right? So if we go to the more traditional farming countries, we see in our bank that COVID didn't really impact a lot, in the sense that the farmers still being able to produce, etc. We did have impact, obviously, on the change a little bit of the suppliers. So certain countries, they had a very good impact, like prices went up, but other countries, prices went down. Look at what happened in the US with corn, where people started to drive less, so had less corn being used by the ethanol industry. But on the other hand, if you look at countries like New Zealand with dairy, they suddenly started to, once China got out of the COVID, started to export more. So there's a lot of, what we have seen is that there is not one size fits all. But the reality is that it looks like that a lot of the traditional value chains have been holding up very well, but we have seen that they are vulnerable. And we have especially seen that, especially in countries that are a little bit emerging countries, a bit weaker countries, the vulnerability have been much bigger. So I think that I could say that one of the things we will notice is that some of the value chains have not performed as we have thought, should have performed. But most importantly, I think that we have now the chance to think again. Go back, what I say, going to the drawing table, doesn't make sense for every commodity to have this long value chain, so and be so let's say vulnerable to it. So I think this is an opportunity to rethink, and also to look at are these long value chains working for everybody?
Are politicians aware of the fact that this is a moment to rethink? And indeed, in preparing this interview, you said we need to go back to the drawing table. We need to rethink value chains. Do politicians value this moment?
Well, I think that there's a big worry about politicians to get as quick as possible back to normal, right? But I think that, if I look at my organization, we are going to create a new normal, also in the way we work. So I hope that we take this opportunity to create this new normal also for food. And why it's so necessary, in my view, is that besides the fact that we have seen that there is vulnerability, the other point is that I do think that we have to look at, the public is ready to think about, could we shorten these value chains? So there's a lot of public willing to start thinking about, okay, even if we shorten certain value chains and have to pay a little bit more, it makes sense for me, because I think buying my food from something that's 10 kilometers from my home or 20 kilometers makes much more sense than buy something that's coming all the way out of Australia or Brazil, etc. So I think that it's never going to be everything, but there is a willingness of the public to sit down and change a little bit. And I think that we have to make use of that, because there are business cases that make a lot of sense to make it shorter. And I think also that we have to make sure is that we understand is that long value chains also have environmental costs.
Now, Rabobank is by far the biggest international financier of agro-food chains. What are you doing? How are you participating in creating this new normal?
Well, first you have to start understanding this new normal. So in my view, the first thing we have to understand is what is the cost of nature in all the products that we consume. So I could imagine that today, if somebody goes to a supermarket, it has no capability. We have no capability of understanding how much nature is in that product or how much nature that product has consumed. And that consumption could be in the form of water, gas emissions, could also be in the form of transport. And I think that new normal is very important, that once we put price on nature, it will make much more sense of where we produce our food and how the food is distributed. And
this is called true costing. So you're advocating true costing.
I advocate nature costing.
Nature costing.
Right, at least that, but the thing is that we also try to be perfect, right? So I think we should not try to be perfect, we should try to be more or less perfect. Mm-hmm. So if we have it 80% right, then we're already going to change the behavior. So if I take my family, my kids, if they go to the supermarket and they know this product has consumed 3 times nature and compared to the same product only has consumed 1 time nature, even if they would be the same price, they will always buy the 1 times nature, right? So I think that we have no ways. So I think this opportunity of COVID is because also this willingness of people, and we are starting to change also, and to understand that this planet we're living in is going to be different for the way we attend to it in the future. So my statement is clearly, if we don't put the real cost of nature into the products, we will not see a change of. There is a willingness of change of behavior, but we now still have to show the people why it's so important to change behavior. And
these criteria, because you need criteria to put a price on nature.
Yeah.
Did you develop them? Where can I find them?
Well, we are working very hard on this because we have a big research.
You as Rabobank?
We as Rabobank are working together with other parties to think about an idea of having a carbon bank, where you start thinking about, okay, what's the value of the carbon? Because if you think about the farmer, he is a carbon manager, right? So he takes, right, and you put carbon in the ground and you make a product of carbon. So I think that we have to support our clients to develop that, right? So one of the thinking that we are having is obviously starting with very simple things, is that the moment that you start measuring how much carbon, let's say, a farmer can capture, and you could pay for that, it's already the first step of going and starting to develop a carbon thinking in your products.
But nature, I liked the nature costing.
Yeah.
Now it boils down, it seems to boil down to CO2 costing. Is that all, or is it more?
That's what I'm thinking. It's so complex that you have to start with the simple things. Mm-hmm. So I think the moment that you put the price on water, for instance, like they have done in California or have done in Australia already, you see change of behavior of the farmers because they start to maximize the return on the water. So that's already a first thing of trying to put the price on nature. The moment that you try to do it also with carbon, which is something that we already know more or less the price of carbon, and we already know the effect of carbon in our nature. So we know that today the whole value chain of food is emitting 12 gigatons of CO2 equivalents. We know that. And we also know that we have to go back to 4 gigatons in the coming years to meet Paris Agreement, while we have to produce more because we have more people. And so we know the problem, right? And we also know that there are markets, voluntary and compulsory markets of CO2, where there is a price. We know that there is a place where price is formed for carbon. So what I'm trying to say is that the big danger, I think, right now is that we go in perfection, but we could take some very simple things and start to put it already, these externalities, into the pricing of our products on a very simple way, and so that we have a better comparison. So in my view, that will make automatically some business cases of short, let's say, supply chains much better. Because one of the issues of long supply chain is that, yes, you have to transport that product from whatever region far away on the south, from the south of hemisphere to the northern hemisphere, and that's all consuming. Let's say that's also consuming nature to do that, right? So then you would, I think, you would have really different business cases and make it again much more interesting to do short value chains. Because I do believe that that's why long value chains are so good, because we are not paying for the nature of what we are doing in the other places.
It's externalizing costs. So to recoup, COVID-19 is the moment to rethink, to go back to the drawing table. It's the moment to internalize nature costing. It is about CO2, it's about water, well, let's just develop it. It's about nitrogen, it's about biodiversity, and it's about soils, and that probably is about it. 5 items, that is what I count. Am I being...
Well, no, more than that. There's also access to regulations, proper regulations, access to proper logistics.
Yeah.
Those things add to the cost and add also to sometimes even to broken value chains. It's adding proper cold storages, etc. So it's more than that. It's creating this infrastructure, which most probably today is not being able to. That's why you have to go to the drawing board. We have to agree again.
The logistical part is very important
That's
as well.
important. So why the hundreds of millions of smallholder farmers in Africa, they don't have access, although they have access to land, water, etc., but they don't have access to a lot of other externalities to make them successful.
Right.
And I think that's one of the key things when I'm talking about this drawing board, right? So I've been mandated by the Rabo Group now for the first time to set up a specific department to cater for smallholder farmers. So I was always more focusing on the developed countries, on the big farming industry. So we are now looking at specifically how can we create an ecosystem so that we can cater for the smallholder farmers in a successful way.
Right.
Because the thing is that in many places like Africa, 70% of the food is going to be produced by smallholder farmers. So if we don't enable them, and Africa is going to, from the 1 billion people we have right now to the 4 billion people forecasted in 2100, and we don't enable the smallholder farmers to be successful, I think you're really talking about going back to the drawing board. How are we going to enable those hundreds of millions of smallholder farmers to be successful entrepreneurs to supply the mega cities which are coming off the ground in Africa? I mean,
and that is a smallholder green revolution.
I think, yes.
Not a big holder, but a smallholder.
I think it's a smallholder because think about it. If we don't, the smallholder today, and then that's why I'm saying that, because you're talking about the soil and all those things, they are cared, they know, but they just don't have the technology. They want to do right. And so the way I look at it is that a smallholder today has more or less the output of 20% or 10 to 20% of what a farmer can do in the developed world, right? Because they just don't have access to these other things which I'm talking about. The moment they have access to this logistical and to finance, by the way, right? So there is a very important part for organizations like Rabobank. I think then you can change. If we could double or triple their productivity, which is still medium output compared to what most of the Europe does, they already having 3 times more earnings than they had before. And also they can most probably already solve a lot of the supply problems that we will having with the large cities in Africa. So,
and they won't migrate to cities, they will stay in the land.
Exactly, yeah, because I mean, that's what we need to avoid, right? So those cities in Africa, they don't have the infrastructure to absorb all those people. Yeah. Right, so I'm a true believer that there is in this recontract that we are doing. That's why nature is so important, because if you only produce 20% of what your land is being able to produce, you are actually not using nature to the best. And if you even then can have a shorter supply chain, it means that you also again add to your business case, right? Because for me, it doesn't make any sense importing wheat from the US into Nairobi, while you could easily produce corn-based breads and corn-based starches out of corn, which is just around. I mean, sorry, we need a new agreement.
we need a new social contract and infrastructure. Yeah. Now, Barry, obviously Rabobank is very important. It's by far the largest international agribusiness financier. But are all the stakeholders coming along with you? Are there NGOs who are at the same level? It's the 5 I coined. The infrastructure needs to go with it. So you need, these criteria need to be supported by a whole lot of people. Are they coming along?
I think more and more. If I'm now almost 12 years on the board of the bank, right? So before I came to the board, I had not the chance to travel so much in the sense of going to Africa and those places, and didn't have the chance to go to places like Davos and all those things where you talk to the let's say to the real thinkers of the world.
You go there to Davos?
Yes. And when I started, if you think about what's discussed there, were not those issues, right? So economics, etc. In the last Davos, even before the pandemic, the 5 top items were actually nature and food, etc. How we're going to do it. So it completely migrated slowly to there, right? So climate, ecological food, those things were not on the agenda when I started. Now it's bang on your face. So I think that last Davos was for the first time, which I had the feeling, and unfortunately we had COVID, but was the first time I had the feeling that the thing is changing. The thing of the urgency is changing. And I'm very happy that Rabobank has been in the forefront of trying to make those changes. We have already for many years the foundation. We already reached 5 million smallholder farmers, but we also reach the large farmers. So the thing is, it's for me very clear is that if we don't work with all the ones that produce food, and we make all of everybody who's doing that aware, if we don't going to work with the whole value chain, also from the consumer, it's not going to work, because we need to double food production and almost reduce emissions of that to zero. Well, we are going from 12 gigatons. I mean, this is not...
It's just impossible.
It's not... No, I think it's possible if we go back to the drawing board. Because, I mean, to be very honest, it's not that it's not possible. It's just that we have to change the way we consume, what we consume, when we consume. Today we want to have all the products all the year long in the supermarkets. Yes, I mean, if we're really going to do that contract, that Mandarin is not going to be always every year available anymore. So we go back to a lot of things that nature has taught us in the past and the way we have lived in the past. I mean, I ate mangoes in Brazil, but I only had mangoes when the mango tree was flowering and had their fruits. And when there was no mango anymore, I had no mango, right? So sorry, I'm making it a little bit very simple thing. We had one in the garden. But nowadays, I go to the supermarket, you can find mangoes the whole year round. Is that the right way? I'm making this new way of this social contract. We will have to eat less meat. There's no way around.
That's for sure. That's the ideal. But it's, from an organizational point of view, it's a huge task. So how to organize all these stakeholders? You need them internationally. You need them nationally. You need to change the food chain, the way the whole delivery chains. Everything will have to change. Who is organizing this? Even for Rabobank, and for you, you're capable of lots of things, but it's a huge task. It's too much.
Well, it's a lot. So we are now, I think, very important is going to be the World Food Summit, right, which is coming next year, 2021, under the leadership of UN. You see a lot of movement going on, a lot of very good large companies, multinationals, also Farmers Association, etc., slowly coming together saying, we really need to start talking about a different normal. And that's why I think that COVID, and coming back to COVID, was so important, that we all starting to realize we have to look for this new normal. And for me, even the public being so vocal about some of the issues, social issues that we are seeing right now, like with Mr. Floyd there, with racism. I hope that we also can use this new way of thinking about we don't accept the normal anymore. I think that's going to be very important.
Okay. What I'm pressing at, perhaps obviously, is the world is falling apart in geopolitical blocks. We're in a kind of global Middle Ages. And what you need is getting people together. So you see things coming along. What you could see from the outside is that the world is falling apart. And how are these two forces developing? What do you think?
Well, I work for a cooperative, right? So I already worked 30 years.
Cooperation.
I worked for a cooperative already for 30 years. I made a very clear choice for a cooperative. I think the cooperative is cooperation, but more than that, right? So a cooperative is not just cooperation because we like it, no, but you have your own interest because therefore you also get, by means of working together, you make the total stronger, but also yourself stronger. And that's the way I look. I think because of food being something that is global also, and at the same time very local, you have to work together. Certain regions, they just cannot because they don't have enough water or they don't have enough land. Think about Asia and the booming of Asia. They need other regions to be able to supply them with the calories they need to survive. It's just they need to cooperate, right? So there are some regions. The Netherlands needs to cooperate because a lot of the business case of the Netherlands is about transforming, let's say, low-value food into high-value food, and therefore be able to of course, we need to look at this impact and have to take a good look at it. But that's also a business case, and you need cooperation for that and those value chains. So today, I mean, the US produces more than they can consume. So they need to cooperate in value chains to be able to...
In order to sell it.
To sell it.
Yeah.
But they also import a lot of things that people want to. So you need to cooperate to be able to make this global food to work. And to be very honest, and I think just in my concept is that for me, it's actually what's important is how much nature you consume to produce a good nutrient. Not the calorie, not the grams, because at the end we survive by the fibers we eat, but also by the nutrients and to a certain amount of calories, right? So we need 3,000 calories, but if you only eat calories, only eat sugar, right? You also need the protein, so we will need meat too, but on different quantities. So we need to have that balanced food, right? So for me, what's really is how much emissions we do for the nutrients we need, and so certain foods are or the superfoods whatsoever, they have a very good nutritional value, and they are produced in certain regions. So at the end, the world is one system, and so I look at that as a big opportunity that we have to talk about now. So Brazil might be very good in producing certain foods where you have low emissions with high nutritional density, and Europe produces other food with high nutrition. And so because you need the whole package to survive, I think at the end we will be looking for each other because it's just not viable to do it differently. So the world is just, we can't do it. Otherwise, we will have a lot of social unrest, unfortunately, but that's reality.
I like that. Get together, try to create shared value, understand what your common destiny is, and try to do the best in terms of nature costing and nutrient costing, right? Yeah. That is what you're saying. Yeah. And how to do it, well, that is an organizational problem, but you're optimistic. We just need to do it.
I mean, the thing is, it's not about optimism, it's about realism. It's about realism because, as I said, from 12 gigatons to 0 and double the tell me.
That's a challenge.
It's a challenge, but that's really what we need to do. And I think a lot of leaders in the world finally are realizing this.
Because they realize social unrest, as you just said. You said it timidly, but you said it loud.
But they, not only that, they also realize is that the planet just can afford not to do something, and that's really my saying. That's why nature costing is so important.
That kind of, so we'll realize that we need to do it.
We need to do it because, I mean, the cost of not doing it is actually less food production. Because if we go on, it's going to be more volatile. The more volatility. Look, farming is about, the plant, you need predictability. You need to know pretty much how much water is going to fall, how the weather is going to be. If you're planting and you have too much volatility, your productivity and the average on long term goes down. There's no way around it because you have too much extremes, too many extremes. So for us, that predictability is very important. So the more we are seeing it, in our models we are seeing it also, is that we have more weather events going on right now in the farming industry than we had before. So it's not okay. It's really the farmer himself is seeing, oh, we need to change, right? So what we try to do as bank, right, is try to be part of this global ecosystem that's coming together. What we are trying to do, as I said, is try to cater not only for the large farmers that would be the traditional, but also looking at the smaller farmers. We try to create a global village of farmers, so we call it the global farmers. We are trying to build a big network of farmers and also large corporates through advisory boards. So they come together, we start talking, we participate in the big fora. IFAMA, which is in my view one of very important association where we come together, the World Food Prize. We try to participate so that we can be part of this ecosystem. As a bank, we basically don't produce food, right? But we can support this industry.
Yeah, I get that. So you presented the image of what you're doing very clearly. We need to go back to the drawing table. We need to define the right criteria, get rid of the wrong, long food chains and use not all of them.
We have to support the right.
We have to support the right ones. We have to value the right nutrient value, and that's all there. Now, you're working in that field. Whom would you need support from to get it going? On the part of the NGOs, are they doing what they can do? On the parts of governments, are they doing what they can do? On the part of the big trading companies, are they are they working in that direction already? What if you could wish for something, what would you wish for in order to get it going?
I think that industry has to sit together with the regulators, with the let's say the polity. We as an industry have to sit together with
Is government the biggest problem?
No, but we need to define. I think we need to define new rules. New rules of how we put things together.
Could you give us some examples of new rules?
Well,
that would be needed.
One example is what is the price of nature in the food, right? So
right.
That's one example. How much do we accept, right? That how much actually should come from let's say how you call it, the regenerative farming.
Regenerative
right?
farming, yeah.
Which is an important thing. Are we willing to pay for the farming industry to sequester carbon, right? Because that's one of the things you can do. If you do regenerative farming, you can every year...
But this is a discussion on criteria.
And criteria. And I think we have to sit together. I don't think that we are opposed to each other. I think we have to sit together and talk to each other. Okay, what is this vision that we have for the future of how we're going to produce food?
Is there enough common understanding on what the criteria should be?
No, but I don't...
That is what we need to work on.
I think we have to work on that, because once you have the criteria, because it also should not be done in isolation, right? Just say, you know what, there is no... we are not allowed to emit anymore, point. It doesn't work.
It should be a political, in the right sense of the word, discussion in society.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So what do you really... Where we want to go to? I think if the idea is we have to go to zero emission of food, of the value chain of food, then we have to sit together and say, okay, what's the path there, right? And I think that we should slowly then only through regulator, maybe even to financial support, right? Because it's a big change, right? Like we did had on the energy transition, we had support also through let's say solar power, right? And we need to have that transition. We have to be clear how we're going to go there and what's that transition we're looking at. It's going to be a hard one because we don't have so much time actually.
How much time do we have?
Look, we are now in 2020. I mean, the first agreements of the sustainable goals are in 2050, right? So, and in 2050, we'll have most probably 1 billion more people in the world. So, so the thing, I really think that we...
And you first have to organize for getting organized.
Yeah, but it's organizing, right?
Yeah.
I think the sense of urgency is there, right? I think COVID made it clear that, there
could be the catalyst.
That could be a catalyst, right? So that could be, because we really see things have to happen. And I think there is starting to be a willingness of also the politicians to say, okay, it's not only about the energy, it's also about food production, right? So if you look at where we have to solve the thing, and obviously we will have governments that go left and right, but the core has to work on it.
We need to sit together in order to define what we want, and that would be organizing for getting organized to do it. Barry, I suggest that we put this question, how to sit down, that is basically the question, I guess. Would you agree on that? That we put that question to the IFAMA members.
Would be a good one. Yeah.
In order to get something going. That is what they need to do because they are the network. Thank you very much for this interview.